I'm Felix Levine, and welcome to Unlike Me, where I sit down with fascinating people I have nothing in common with.
And we're live. Cyrus, thank you so much for coming in here. Also, I realized we haven't hung out officially, so I'm very excited to spend some time with you, learn. I've already been listening to a lot of things, a lot of podcasts, learning so much about you in the last couple of days, but I'm so excited to have you. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you so much for having me. It's going to be so fun.
So, is there something the world doesn't know about you from what's already out there?
So much. No, I'm kidding. I auditioned for The Voice. I don't think people know this.
No way.
I literally was the first time I came to New York and I was 16. I think it was the second or third season. And I made it through all the way until right before they televised it.
Okay.
And they told me that I had no confidence. Literally, straight up, they were like, you just need to be more, come back when you have more confidence. And I was like, God, thanks. It was producers, so I didn't know who they were. But it was one of those things that I sing a lot. Music has been a huge part of my life that no one knows about. Every once in a while, I'll post a video of me singing, and I think people will be like, excuse me? And I'll be like, yeah, that's what I used to do.
So, are we going to re-audition now?
Listen,
they said come back with confidence, and we'll talk about that, but it appears, at least on the outside, there's...
100%. I feel like it's something that I would definitely do, as Serena would say, for the plot. I would for sure do it for the plot and just have fun with it and see how it goes, because I definitely want to sing more on my platform.
That would be so
sick.
We'll
see how it goes.
So, first of all, we have a lot of commonalities, and I was excited... The French. We were just speaking a little bit of French.
Yes, we were.
I went to BU, so I
didn't know that.
In the territories that you were raised in.
Oh yeah, right on Com Ave.
Right on. Where were you?
I was not in quite a chic location. I was in Medford, Massachusetts. I went to Tufts, and I lived in Medford. I loved Somerville. The area that I lived in Medford was not fantastic, but it was very gritty. I got very used to just that vibe.
I had to spend a semester in Malden.
Malden too, yeah. No, I mean, it's just very family and very quiet. But then, Somerville was really fun. It was up and coming, and I've been in Boston since I was born. So, just it's nice to only go back when I have to.
Yeah, that's true.
That's what I'll say.
All right. What would little 10-year-old Cyrus say about where you're at today? Pride, surprise, knew it all along.
I think they would have known it all along. I don't think I would have known it all along. No, I think a part of me always thought that I would be on a stage somewhere.
Okay.
And I just never think that they would have imagined that it would be in the format that it is right now, which is just behind my phone. I think it's a very interesting place because I think a lot about my younger self and all the things that I wanted to do. And there was so much growth that I had to go through. Otherwise, it wasn't even if everything had worked out, it still wouldn't have worked. I mean, I had so much that I needed to work through since I was a kid that recently, in the past few years, fell into place. So I think they wouldn't be surprised, but I think they'd be a little bit shocked at how, well-adjusted we've become.
How, I guess, what has that adjustment process been like from younger self to now?
I think when I was a kid, I came out really young to my parents.
10 years? 10?
Yeah, I was 10.
Yeah.
And I told my dad on the couch, and it was one of those things where I was when I get this over with, everything's going to get better. And
right.
Everything's, that's what everyone was telling me, it gets better, you do this, it's all that. It was just, I had no idea the beast that was going to come in the next 10 years after that, which was... Coming out is one whole journey that happens. It's really traumatic, but also really wonderful at the same time. It can be. And then it was okay, now how do I navigate this? Now I live my life openly. And then I came out again as non-binary. And that was a whole nother experience.
When you were how old?
I honestly, it was much more, I feel like coming out was much more of a public thing, and coming out as non-binary was really a private thing for me when I was in my early 20s. I just sort of landed on this identity of my gender fluidity exists very powerfully in between the binaries of gender, which is men and women, where that exists. And that fucking sucked. It was the worst experience. Coming out as non-binary was the most debilitating, demoralizing, because it was something that was so private to me that when I made public and when I talked about it on social media, it was so much more of an issue than when I came out as gay, or as queer. It just was this whole other level of okay, that's too much. Now you're making things up. Do you know what I mean? Like
I
it was,
see.
but it was originally just such a personal thing. Like it made sense to me. And as a sociology major, I'd studied so much about gender and sort of like the history of gender and cross-culturally how gender works.
Right.
And so it was so clear to me. So how is it possible that it's so confusing to people? I think that was the struggle of when I came out as non-binary.
And had you planned it out in your head? Did it go as you might have thought?
Well, I think it was, so I actually got into social media and being a creator because I was using beauty as like a form of an apology to myself. Like it was like, everybody says beauty is a form of expression. I always say it's also a form of forgiveness. So it means that like every time I was cruel to myself when I was younger, or I said something cruel to myself, it's almost like every time I've done a beauty look, it's like another apology. It's like rebuilding that relationship with my younger self. So it was very personal. So then when I started to post about it publicly, that's where I like got into social media and I loved it and I started to do it. But the issue is once it became very public, everybody, especially like hateful people, thought it was for them when it wasn't. They just started to attack it and go after it. And I was like, this was never for you. And so I think I've had a lot of trouble trying to navigate it now.
Was going public for you your way of being your full self?
Yeah, I think
so. Or was
so.
it for, or was there some other kind of intention?
I think part of it was also like growing up, I knew that I didn't identify as a person of trans experience. Like I was very feminine and I wanted to really explore femininity, but I knew that I wasn't in a place where I wanted to transition to whatever capacity it was. I just knew that I existed somewhere outside of the binary, right? Like I'm male. There's no denying that. I was born male. And then all of these sort of like characteristics that come in are gender, like manhood and womanhood and what that means. And I just never associated with them. So I think for me, coming out publicly was more of a way for like younger people
I see.
who express or feel that, because I had no idea. I mean, I was in a really dark place when I was a kid because I could not figure out what it was. So I think it's like a lot of what I do is meant for younger people, and why I came out publicly as non-binary was so that younger people can see me and be like, I get that, or I resonate with that.
When you, like, how old were you when you started to realize exactly what you just described?
5.
Oh, okay.
6. Like I was.
Were you able to like verbalize it or put it into words?
It was I wanted to be a girl.
Okay.
That was the only thing that existed. I was like, oh, I don't want to be a boy. I want to be a girl. And then when I went to college and I was at Tufts, which was, there was this very active social justice community, and I was taking sociology classes and I had these incredible professors that were talking about gender and talking about what non-binary was. I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? I was like, what are I was like, there's no, and then I was like, oh wait, this actually is very much how I feel. I don't feel like I want to show up as the man that everyone assumes that I am or sees me, and then the woman that people will say you'll never be. And it's so funny because I always say that my haters are the people who actually validate my gender the most, because they say you'll never be a man and you'll never be a woman. And I'm like, exactly.
There's something else,
you get it.
I wrote it down because I was listening to you on a previous podcast. I think it was the We Met at Acme podcast.
Oh, it's okay,
I'm pretty sure. But you said something that I thought was so incredible. You said, people are obsessed with trying to locate my trauma, but they're just revealing their own.
Every time.
And it has nothing to do with me.
It has nothing to do with me.
And I was like, that is such a, especially with people that can send hate and all of that, I think is such a beautiful approach where it's like, I feel like you almost have empathy for these people, even though they don't deserve it, right? Like 100%. Objectively don't deserve it.
No, they don't. Objectively, they don't.
But I almost think that it shows exactly who you are, and almost like I think is empowering to you.
Thank you. I mean, it is. It's. I always tell people though, the work that I had to do to get to this place took a very long time, and it when I saw the difference, was when I could distinguish between something that someone would say that would affect me versus impact me. The difference being, someone says, you look horrible, you're so ugly, which, but like, sure. When I was younger, for a while, it would affect me. So I would feel those emotions and be upset, and then it would impact me. Take the photo down, take off the makeup. Don't post it. Now, it never gets past affecting me. I mean, I get hundreds and thousands of hate comments and death threats every day. Every day. There's no day that doesn't go by where it's something crazy in terms of the volume. But it doesn't impact me anymore, meaning like I won't make a decision based off what someone says. It's impossible. For me, it's like I could never be the person that will always say, oh, like it never gets to me. I mean, like when you see like hundreds of comments, it gets to you, but I'll never make a decision because of what someone else says. Because what I've found is that like I don't exist in a world where I hate myself. I exist in a world where other people hate me, but I don't live in that world anymore.
Do you make that conscious decision?
I did, yeah. I told myself that if I didn't accept that people were going to hate me, that there was no point in me doing what I was doing. Like, I see it as such a huge part, because then I see all the people who do love me and want me to keep going and keep doing what I'm doing. And then I always just think about why I started this in the first place, was that this was such a personal decision. Yeah, I'm public. I'm very public facing now. But if everything crashed and burned tomorrow, I would still feel very free. And I would still feel like I've done so much for myself. And I think that's the most important thing. And hopefully for people, parents who have kids who are coming out, people who will never be able to come out, who find joy in my content, even the relationship that I have with my dad, it's like all these things to me are more important than the hate that I get. So I made that active decision to be like, I'm just not going to exist in that world anymore.
Did you ever, or and maybe this has changed over time, like set out to try to change people's minds?
Yes.
Or, okay, and then
100%.
And now is that approach different?
Now this is what I'm like, those services now, frankly, are billable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm like, now that work is billable. Before it was very like, I'll do it and like, let me see what I can. Now I'm like, yeah, well, we can have that conversation. Just I'll invoice you and we'll, do you know what I mean? I do it now. It's like, I find it more exhilarating and fulfilling to focus on the people that are there to listen and to do work. And it's sort of like, my platform, because I infuse a little bit of sort of like levity and satire and comedy into what I do. And I think a lot of men come to my platform, they think I hate men. And I love men. Like I think, and it's the thing is, I'm like, I hate you. I don't hate men. Like, I'm like, I hate you. Because there are so many men that will privately DM me who are straight men. Either they're married in relationships or they're younger. And they're like, I learned so much from you, or I get what you're saying. And I'm like, you get it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, it's never about like this generalization. And honestly, frankly, if like male comedians can use satire and get away with it and also say shitty shit that I'm just saying like, oh, like men suck, like fuck off. I'm sorry. Like there's people who say things that are way worse than what I say at the point of levity in which it doesn't work. Anyway, I rest my case. All I say is like, I think for me, my focus is on the people who are coming to me with an open mind and want to learn. Like there's moms who will message me and have been following me for years and be like, when I followed you, I really didn't get it. And I even didn't agree with you. And I just had to sit and learn. Do you know what I mean? It's like, sometimes I regret that I do a lot of satire and comedy because it does miss people, but it's life. It's fine. It is what it is.
A couple things. The first is that like me and Serena are obsessed. Like we think we said it to each other. Like I think if you don't get it, you're just.
It's fine. I'm like at this point, I'm like, if you get it, you get it. If you don't, it's fine.
But the other thing that I find interesting as well is like, I'm a straight white male, right?
Yeah.
And I want to be there for you.
Yeah.
And I think that and I've been guilty of this in the past as well, where because there's sometimes an uncertainty on, or the fear of potentially misgendering or not knowing enough about your experience, that a lot of straight white males or males or just tend to kind of avoid the conversation altogether, push it to the side, and almost like make it a thing when it doesn't have to be a thing.
Totally.
So for me, like what I really want, not only from today, but in general, is like, how can a straight white male be there for you and support you?
I think a huge part of that is supporting me when I'm not there. That's my biggest thing.
Okay.
I don't need I don't need allyship when I'm there in person.
Right.
I need it when I'm not. I think that's the most important thing. Like
now, so then how, sorry to interrupt you, but like, so then how, when you're not there, let's say.
Yeah, it's like I have a lot of friends, and I grew up with a lot of straight guy friends who, I think it's the difference between, obviously, like if I'm in a room with a bunch of your old friends from high school, or like your family friends, and something faggot, something slips out, and I'm there, I'm assuming you're going to say something, or you're going to maybe try and stick up for me, and I can do that myself. When I'm not there and it happens, what do you do?
Right.
Are you going to say something? I'm not there, so you don't have to. But are you going? I think that type of allyship makes more of a difference, because you hold a lot of value and weight in those communities. It's why 99% of what I do is for women. It's because why do women have to be the only ones who fucking defend themselves? Like, or like, why do queer people have to be the only ones who defend themselves? My dad, saying something when a construction worker says something homophobic is going to hold, and like calling them out on it is going to hold more weight than me saying something. They're going to expect that. So I think that form of allyship is so powerful. And it's more of like, we have to meet each other halfway. I use comedy and I use satire, and I said all men suck to see what your gut reaction is. And if you can laugh along with it, or you can see that it's something bigger than that, I will have those conversations. I said I would never go on a straight white male's podcast. Here I am. Because it's about you. It's about, are we just meeting each other where we can actually have a good conversation? Am I being respectful and not like yelling at you when maybe you make a mistake about something that your intent was not in a bad place? And then are you showing up for me when I'm not there? That's the sort of orchestra of relationship that I see. And not just with straight white men, but with anyone who doesn't share that same identity, complex, and intersectionality that I do.
No, and I think, really the couple things that stood out to me from listening and reading more on your story prior to this was like, you have an unbelievable amount of patience and intelligence to be able to have these conversations. Because I think like 99% of humans couldn't probably deal with what you described earlier of like the hundreds of messages every day, and instead of like internalizing it and then feeling poorly about yourself, being able to still live your life and have a smile on your face. And I think that's the most like beautiful part of you, your brand, what you've created, the way that you make other people feel. And I hope that you know that and feel that as well.
Yeah, I'm learning about it. I mean, I'm becoming more confident in it every day. I think for me, I always like to say I'd rather people come to my page than to like some 19-year-old kid who hasn't come out yet. I mean, God forbid someone says something to them that impacts them and they do something. I'd rather it be me. So I think, because again, I have done so much work. And I also think that unfortunately, I mean, this being on social media, at this point, there's nothing I haven't heard.
Yeah.
It's really hard to shop. Like, I do this thing where I'll post a clapback. Like, someone will post something and I'll respond out of empathy, or I'll respond to the hate comment and I'll say something. Sometimes it's cheeky, sometimes it's not. And then I get messages sometimes being like, I cannot believe these are the messages that you get. And I'm like, bitch, this doesn't even... I don't even let my team see the level of shit that I get. Like, but again, it's never about like, I need attention from this and I need protection. It's more like, we're going to lose the plot if I get too bogged down into things that, and for me, those people don't exist in my world. If I get too bogged down in them, I won't get out of bed. Like, it's one of those things that, again, I never think that any creators or anybody who puts themselves online or in the public is worthy of their violence. Right. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. Like, you're public, but you don't deserve any violence that comes to you. A huge part of it is just desensitization. I mean, I've just seen it literally all. Like, I almost sometimes, like, some of the guys on Snapchat, because I have a Snapchat, they get very creative.
And they swipe up
they'll message, they'll leave comments. They're really fucking creative. Like, they're the closest I get to, I'm like, there could be a movie about your brain. Like, you're really scary.
Oh, wow.
Like, it's,
Is it usually long or is it like one-liners?
It's the scariest ones are the shortest ones and the paragraphs. The in-betweens, I'm like,
yeah.
either try
the
harder or do
paragraphs
less.
feels like it's almost like too much energy.
I've gotten novels.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, so, and I just immediately block. I mean, at this point, I try not to really entertain any of that anymore, just because now I'm at a point where I truly do fear a little bit for the type of people that are out there, just given how the climate is of the world.
Yeah.
So, but again, like, I think I've always been an advocate for, you do what works for you. This works for me. If you can't have those conversations, I say this all the time, like, I have friends who are of all different types of intersectional identities. I mean, like, take Black trans women, for example, like, among the most marginalized in this world. And it's like, I fucking get it that you don't want to have civil discussions with people and white people. Like, I get that. I'm not going to tell you how to have conversations or how to do emotional labor. I'm never going to say that. I'm happy to do some of that on behalf of people. So I think it's like, to each his own a little bit too. I'm glad that I can meet people halfway, but I also now, I think the reason why I've been good at it is because I know immediately if this is worth a conversation. If not, I'm not going to waste my time.
What about some of the maybe messages that have brought you the most joy and like, or maybe someone's life that you impacted via DM or whatever that you think about often?
I mean, I think a lot of it is like with people I'm gonna try not to get emotional. I think it's like people who lose their parents. I think it's hard because I try and do a lot with my dad to showcase what a positive relationship can look like with your parent when you're queer, non-binary, and trans. I don't want that to ever take away from the very real experiences that are people get, disowned and they get left. There's just so many stories that I've heard from people and anecdotes. A lot of it is really tough to read, but I think a lot of it is like, sometimes I think I'm just making really silly, stupid fucking videos on the internet, but then I don't realize how much is actually impacting people. So I think those messages specifically with Iranians who don't have good relationships with their parents, I think I find a lot of peace with just like having that as something that people can have out there in the world. And that, I mean, it's just like, because so much of what we do is so fleeting, and that is very real. So I think that is like one of the biggest reasons why I've continued to share the intimate parts of my life. Because for a while I was like, I don't want to share my family anymore. It's just, I want to keep that boundary, and we have gotten better at it. But I want people to see that there are positive,
Oh my, and I think, you seem to have such an amazing family. And I think what's so specifically beautiful about it is just that they allow you to be you and support you, whatever it is that you ever choose to do. And I completely understand where you're coming from, but I think that that's part of the beauty of your brand, right? Is like, I can be me, and the people around me love me, and the people around me support me, and I can show the world that this exists. Yeah, which I think for a lot of people, sometimes it's like hard for them to fathom that that could exist.
Yeah, and that it could be something that is I do think that there's a nuance between being tolerant and being supportive. Like, I think that I know people who and it's a really important distinction. Yeah. Like, there's people who have parents who tolerate them. But it's very different than support. It's
also not usually, in my opinion, not support. It's just like, okay.
Yeah, like, we're not going to kick you out, but we're not going to support you. We're not going to show up to you and what your endeavors. We're not going to want to meet your partner. We're not going to do all those things, which to me is just so devastating. So, yeah, I mean, I have the best family. I'm just so lucky to have them. And I think that they were also really helpful for when I started to be more public facing of like, see, like, maybe you don't need to post that. You know what I mean? Or like my mom was really helpful, and especially at a point where I was posting a lot of like clapbacks to hate comments, and she was just really, and they never tell me what to do, but they're just like, maybe you're getting a little bit too invested. So I think it's just been so helpful to have them on the sidelines.
So you have been in media for a while.
Yes.
6-7 years?
Yep, 6-7 years. 7 years. Yeah.
And So will you just give me a little bit of context on, because it looked different pre-COVID,
Totally different.
post-COVID, full-time?
100%. When I moved to New York, I had a sociology degree with a minor in media studies, and I was like, I'm never getting a job. Everybody was so funny. It's like those blue-haired liberals studying like psych. I'm like, Mary, you had a point. Like, I'm not gonna get a job. So I was like, I'll move to New York. Like, I'll figure it out. And I was like, I'm gonna give myself 3 months. And I got a job at Paper Magazine, and I worked as a marketing assistant for this wonderful woman named Jamie, and she was my boss, and she was lovely. And at the time, I was also like, okay, maybe I want to go in editorial and I want to magazines and all these things. But flash forward, I got a job at an agency, a brand marketing agency, like a PR firm that really changed my life. Like I was there for 6.5 years. I was hired on the PR team, and then I sort of transitioned over onto a creative role. And basically my job was to really infuse culture and sort of the intersection of pop culture and social culture into like what our clients and our brands do. So I loved it, and I did that for so long. And then during the pandemic, I literally just started to create videos for fun. And I was doing some beauty tutorials, and then I was doing some videos with my dad. And then the first video that I ever did that went viral was because someone had commented like, you're Iranian and you're queer and you're non-binary. Your dad probably fucking ran for the hills. And I was like, oh my God, let me go video with him. Yeah. So I made this video that was really satirical that was like, bonding with your straight dad, like, like kill me. And it was like me like sipping on a martini, and it was him sort of like telling me about a barbecue, and I was just we were like on different wavelengths. And that video just blew up. And it was really funny because a lot of people were like, see, like, yeah, they can't have a relationship, or why are you being so, and I'm like, you bitches don't even know. I'm like, we are writing concepts together. Right. Like, we are brainstorming how to trigger you. Like, it just became this very, and then it got really real. About 1.5 years, 2 years ago, I met my manager, Rana.
Yes.
And I say this now, but I was really, for a while, I was like, I don't know. Like, I'm just going to I always knew I wanted to work with her, and I knew I wanted to pursue it. And
playing hard to get?
Yeah, I was totally playing hard to get. And she knew it. And I was just like, it was really tough. And then I got into a place where from a business standpoint, I had conflicts with clients where I couldn't take on a project as a creator when I was working with a competitor brand as my client.
So you stayed working.
I worked for a full year while I was.
And were you planning, because I have had a bunch of creators on that, different approaches, but some of them would be like, if I made the same amount in brand deals from my full-time job, then I'm going to go into full-time.
The only thing it was money.
Was that the same approach for you? Was it like a certain number? Was it like?
It was, at first it was double at least. Yeah. And then when I hit double, I was like, triple. And then I was like, I want to make 4 times the amount. It got to a point where then my team was like, you have to make a decision.
But was it, and you wanted to stay because you loved the work?
I loved the work. And also, I loved my team.
And also, I guess you were, triple plus.
Yeah,
single.
It was great. I mean, it was really one of those things where like I had to get to the point where I was making stupid money to be like, okay, this is really silly. And then also I would get called in to do a shoot in the middle of a week, and then it was unfair to my team for me to be like, I'm gonna take a doctor's appointment. Like I wasn't. Like I was like, I was honest with my team, and I was like, hey, listen, this came up. And I think part of it was like, I told myself I was going to make a certain amount of money and then go and jump and do it. And then when I made, again, like 5 times that amount, I was just like, what are you waiting for? Yeah. What are you actually doing? Yeah. And then I signed with agents. And 2 weeks after I signed with my agents, because that was when things then took the next level above just having management. It just opens up your business into so many different avenues. And I don't think they could have done their job if I didn't quit, because they could have booked me to fly to LA to do something in a week, to do this. So it was like almost like the flexibility. And at the time, listen, I'm never about tokenization, but I'm a pretty hard bitch to book. Like in terms of like, good luck trying to find someone who's very similar to me in my lane. So I never worried about not being available from like a market standpoint. I know it sounds so fucked up, but it's like,
but it's great. But it's,
I was like,
oh my God.
I think for me, it's like, I love to ooze charisma on camera. And I was like, maybe this will then lead to bigger opportunities and shoots and campaigns. And I was like, I think I then got really confident about my capabilities. And then that's when I left.
I mean, even I remember Serena and I were walking, we saw you're on the buses.
Oh my God, yeah, it's crazy.
The Codally, which we were so excited.
Yeah, it was really exciting.
And we were just like,
she saw it from nothing. I mean, she knew me when I was pitching her.
Yeah.
At my agency. I mean, Serena was like on every list for PR and stuff that we do for events.
Yeah.
So that was also really exciting. I think seeing who used to be former like clients then turn into friends, now turn into like colleagues.
Yeah.
is a really powerful experience.
But I think what's so interesting, and that was one thing I wanted to bring up, is like from a business standpoint and the market, like, you know, there's so many, with all due respect, like the IG girlies that can do any other 100%. Campaign, right? Mm-hmm. But you are perfect. Like your value, but like actually is much higher because they're like you're not one of the random.
I mean, that was the thing too. Is like I think client first always. Yeah. I'm never gonna submit a piece of content late. I think it's maybe happened once or twice max where I was probably throwing up because I was so anxious about it. I think I was client facing for 4 years out of those 6.5 that I was at my agency. So it's like it was bread and butter to me.
Me and Serena always talk about the people that worked for real.
Yeah.
Like
she's a perfect example of it.
Yeah, like they
you
understand, like 100%. Especially, and you worked on the beauty side at your old job, so you understood how the brands worked, what they're looking for. Like you're a professional through and through, and I'm sure that's like paid massive dividends.
It has. It's also the bane of my fucking existence.
Why?
Because it's I sometimes fucking wish I was a bimbo. I wish I had because it's almost like knowing so much can be a detriment once in a while.
But how?
It's almost like
I know your market value.
I do, but then let's say, for example, I won't get an opportunity. Why? My team will, this happened, that. I go, no. I know that's not why. And not that my team is lying to me. It's more like, I know those fuckers are lying.
Is there an example, without giving names, obviously, that of like just situationally speaking?
It happens all the time with luxury fashion brands. I'll get, the metrics aren't there yet. Or like, and to be fair, I'm still a guest in fashion. I'm working my way in that space and it's going to take a long time. However, I know the business that happens behind fashion and how it depends on if you're a global brand, if you're a regional brand, if you're a small brand, if you're a conglomerate under LVMH, whatever it is. I think the difficulty, and when I say that, I sometimes feel like I know too much, is because I know how those brands work. If the math is not mathing to me from a business standpoint, if I get feedback that's, okay, post all of these things. Okay, I'll post all of them. Just gotta get your metrics up a little bit more in this area. Get my metrics up. Then I'm starting to get a little bit like, oh, you don't like me. Or like, oh, I'm like, just tell me you don't like me. I'm like, I know so much more. And I'm like, I'll calculate my engagement. I'll send my team a video. I'll say this outperformed. This got 3 million views for this luxury brand. Like this makes no sense. That's when then I wish I was just a little bit more ignorance is bliss.
Okay. So then in that case, right? Mm-hmm. What do you think it is about the luxury fashion brands, maybe in certain situations, that what is it? Are they not ready?
No.
And honestly, as a French and we were speaking French earlier, like I always wondered about this.
Yeah.
Like, are they ready? And they're, because I think, unfortunately, especially like France, I'll use because I know it the best, they're still quote unquote a little more conservative,
of course,
and traditional,
100%.
And the biggest luxury brands in the world, like they do what they do and they'll be fine forever because they're the biggest brands in the world.
They're thinking more about everything. I think a lot of, and not to generalize, but I think categorically they think more from like a KPI standpoint in terms of their regions. Like their territories are more important to them than the US sometimes. Like, right. I'm no one. Like even if I was one of the biggest creators, it's still like they might want to focus on France or Korea or whatever the markets are. I think with fashion, what's difficult is you have all of these amazing brands, and it's for luxury. Again, it's also, I think people see me and look at me and they're a little bit like, they wouldn't imagine. Like I remember it was so funny when I worked at a very, very big luxury fashion house. I interned there, and I was around, and we were these executives were talking about they were going to Paris for Fashion Week, and I was sort of interned there, and they were like, oh, like we're gonna get like a drink at like De Mago, and then looked. It's like this cafe. It's in this area, Saint Germain. And I'm like, I grew up. I know the waiters there. Like I've known them since I was 7. Like I'm like, I've lived a world that a lot of people don't. They're like, I get all. How do you have such a good French accent? I'm like, it's my second language. Like I don't know what to tell you. Like I think it's one of those things where it's like with luxury, with fashion, if you don't fit that role in that mold, you better have unbelievable metrics. You better have so many followers, we can't say no.
It's not the metrics.
And that's the thing is I'm always like, and I will say I'm so grateful to the brands who do see me, the fashion brands. And I really do think like from a longevity standpoint, I do want to do less and focus on the brands that I love more. So I will get a lot of no's. But at this point in my career, I think I can tell, and from the achievements that I've gotten, it's hard when I get the feedback is, you know, visibility in the US is not there yet when my face has just been on 150 fucking buzzes and I was on a Prime Video show. Give me a different excuse. Yeah. Don't give me that. Right. I'm like, that hurts me more than just being truthful.
Do you think it's a matter of time?
For some,
yes. I think it is.
I do. I've definitely seen a change. I also see a lot of these really hardworking women that are the next generation of PR that are working at these brands that are doing everything they can to put my name in front of these people. When it's Paris, it's difficult. But there are certain teams in Paris that love me. Yeah. When they hear me speaking French at events, when I go to it's you know this, it's very different. It immediately puts me in a completely different category. And also, if you want me to produce, like I know my content production style is very lo-fi. But when I do need to do a hi-fi piece of content, I know how to do a hi-fi piece of content. Right. So it's like that's how I work with like the amazing, like the Dior beauties and like the Yves Saint Laurent beauties and those brands. Like I sort of mold my style into the format that I know this for Dior beauty, for example, will get approved by Paris most likely. I know how to work within that realm. So it's again, I'm really grateful for those brands that have seen me. I do think it's a matter of time. There's a bucket of them that they're not going to change.
Really?
I don't think they're gonna. I hope. Again, I'm coming from a more skeptical place.
Right.
I hope they do, but I would see them coming in last.
I think there might be like some in a bucket, as you said, that are like take more time.
Totally.
But I think that I'm gonna make a bold prediction. I think we will both be surprised.
Yeah, I hope so.
At the time frame, I think it'll be sooner than we might expect.
Yeah, you just age. With age comes the passing of, older thinking and older people. I'm kidding. But I know it's a mentality that is so archaic. And fashion is so fucking queer and so camp and fashion. I think that's the funniest thing is when these luxury brands are so conservative. I think it's like you think about your consumer target and your design target. It's very different than they want queer people to be cool and trendy and hip and do the ballroom and the voguing to sell the products that they're selling to these rich women that live in the Midwest.
Right.
Like they're doing this very interesting tactic that I'm like, okay, but then include us in this. But oh no, but you're not the design target because you can't afford it's fascinating. I mean, it's really incredible.
Now, how much farther ahead is the beauty world? And
so much farther. Oh my God. I mean,
do you feel like you run into any of the same issues at all?
I don't think a beauty brand has ever said no to me, ever.
Obsessed.
Or skincare brand. I'm not just saying, I've been told no, trust me. There's not a single beauty brand that has ever turned me. I also will say, I think at the beginning when I started my career, I was very nervous because, when you're posting organic media, it's hitting your followers. When brands put paid media behind a piece of content, it's then reaching people that aren't following you or might not even know you exist.
Right.
That's difficult and that's tricky. I think brands tend to run into issues where I get a lot of hate comments on those ads and it's hard for them because they've never seen it before. And I always say, it's nothing to fear. It's anything. It's an indication that you're doing something right. And for every person that hates me, there's 50 other people that are converting and buying the product. So it's sort of like, I think beauty and skincare are so, and I think skincare in particular, because it's like, it was so funny. I just posted this ad that has been going viral and people are like, I can't take this trying to be a woman. I'm like, so skincare, you put it on your skin. So anyone who has physical skin can use skincare.
Right.
I just do it in such a way that I'm like, try something else. You can't go down there. So I think skincare has always been, above and beyond. Even when I was the face of Caudalie for this campaign, I was the first non-binary face of this campaign, of the brand in general, which was amazing. And I was more nervous than they were. I was freaking out. Wow. I was like, no, don't put me on. But I was like, you're going to get back. You might get backlash. You might do that. And they were like, whatever. We love you. And we think you're the face of this. And then see how it was one of the most successful things I've ever done in my career so far. So it's like, I do think that beauty and skincare is just managed by less of a I think less complications in when it comes to like prestige and heritage.
Right.
And a lot of, to be fair, a lot of those, even like the luxury beauty brands are now under the L'Oreals and the Estee Lauders, and like they're not independent anymore. The ones that are independent, that are still beholden to the brand and to Paris, are the ones that are the most difficult to work with. I take it as a challenge. Always.
I
never forget a no, though. I have a list.
In your phone?
I have literally.
You write out the list.
I write it.
So
down.
hold on. Do you just write the name of the?
I write the name of the campaign and what the
and the person there.
No, not the person there.
That'd be kind of iconic.
I do the name and I do what the opportunity was so that I can remember it. Like I've had brands now come back to me that have said no to me before.
And you're like,
I go down. I think it's I write the no's down not out of like wanting to like
spite them.
No, it's more as like a.
Motivator.
Some of them I won't work with anymore. Like now, even like with the beauty brands, there's a few beauty brands that I just won't work with. They're just too difficult to work with. I don't want to work with them. I don't have a pleasant experience doing the campaigns. I don't like the briefs. But like, especially now with fashion that I'm getting so many no's. Oh, baby. There is not a stone that is going to be left unturned.
Where does this list live?
In my office, underneath, I think, like an Hermes bag. It lives there. Oh, 100%. I should convert it digitally. I think I have a few on my phone that have said no. But no, I mean, I think it's, we're slowly getting there. We're very slowly. I'm gonna make it happen. It'll take time.
I'm very confident.
And I celebrate the people who do. I mean, it's like all of these amazing models and women in fashion who are, of trans experiences and trans women that are like, the most, like Alex Consani and Colin and all of these incredible women that are like walking Chanel and walking all of these massive shows that I think it's just gonna take, like you said, I'm optimistic that we'll get there.
Mm-hmm.
I think the way that it'll happen is it'll happen to the people who are the most privileged in that marginalized group first and then trickle down. So like, for example, I in many ways still hold a lot of privilege, right? Like I fit into a sample size. I fit into those things. And I don't, do you know what I mean? Like it's going to come to
I see. There's like,
there's so many layers.
It's like so many criteria and you're going to go down, they're going to go down the list.
Or even like with skin and like with makeup, like I have a nice skin and I have beauty. Like it's very different than for many different people that share similar identities to me, which is why anytime I work with a brand, I always try and recommend or refer other creators like me to work with. Just expand the pool.
Right.
Bring more people in.
Something Serena and I always talk about as well is in this content world, there's always going to be a new it girl coming.
Yeah.
And there's, it's a very highly desired job title.
Yeah.
How do you see for your brand the longevity? Do you think about it? Do you, and I'm also curious, do you think that this creator economy is perhaps in a bubble in terms of, the amounts of money that creators can be paid or are paid?
It's crazy.
Correct. But is there ever how do you approach kind of maintaining to make sure that you can have that money forever and ever as long as you can?
I mean, financial literacy is so important. I was never taught it. I mean, my parents never taught it to me either. Like I just never had that growing up in terms of understanding how it would work from a business perspective. I'm very grateful that this doesn't happen to a lot of people that are in my position, that I have an amazing team. I have an amazing lawyer. I have an amazing, everybody around me that is helping me. And I have, a financial advisor and I have all these like basic things that now when I think about, of course, longevity is my goal. It's like, what are the different streams of revenue? Like, I do think that content creation right now is at its peak with creators being such a huge marketing value to so many different brands. At a certain point though, even I will look at numbers and be like, this doesn't justify how much I got paid.
Right.
It doesn't.
Right.
For awareness, maybe if you want me to be associated with your brand, that's priceless, sweetie. But like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, but when it comes to like actual, I'm like, I think what will happen is you have talent, singers, actors, traditional models. And then you have the creator economy where you have influencers whose job is to sell you product and that's what they do. And maybe you have creators that are sort of around here. And then in the middle, you have this sort of like non-traditional talent where you have like Serena who writes, is also doing this, but she's doing a little bit of this.
Correct.
if I can just navigate my world here in the middle, I think that will eventually, I think the cream of the crop will rise. I think the creators that are well-spoken, that can speak to a client, that can consult for a few months when they're not busy, I think they're the ones that are going to continue their, I think Chrissy Rutherford is an amazing example. I think Jenna Rennert is another amazing example of just these OG folks who started an editorial and so they're such great writers, but they're creators, but then they're also like, they have so many different talents. I see that as like non-traditional talent, as like those are the creators and the people that I think will continue to build generational wealth for themselves.
Do you, in 10 years from now, what do you want your brand to be? What do you want to be?
I don't want it to exist. I want to be on an island somewhere.
Is that the goal? Like just make a
I joke.
Extra stupid money and just fuck off?
Honestly.
Sounds pretty good.
Kind of. Like, no. I mean, I think like I'll never not want to work.
Yeah.
I'll never not want to consult. I see myself in 10 years maybe like doing more of a... Listen, if my career takes a turn and I end up being very public facing for a very long time, I'd love that. But a part of me is just sort of like to make as much money as I can in the next 10 years, to live off of that and feed that more, and then to just like do the silly little things that I want to do. Everything for me, so much of it is a means to an end. I mean, I love having creative projects. I love to write and I love to sing and I love to speak. I always joke, but whenever I do a panel to my team, I'm like, oh my God, if I could just do this every day and they're sort of like, oh yeah, no. And I'm like, no. I'm like, I would love to do this. So I can sort of see it in many different directions. But I don't think I'd ever not want to work. Because I think I'm tied to wanting to make beautiful things if I can.
But you're an excellent communicator. I'm curious, do you know why someone would think you're an excellent communicator?
I think it's because I put all my needs in the back seat. I'm like, when I'm with someone, my priority is to either give them what they want or to my challenge is in being able to meet someone wherever they are in terms of communication. I love the challenge of being able to level up or level down to someone else. I always find it to be like, if I can make you feel at peace, and no matter what your communication style is, if we're just talking, if it's back and forth, if one of the things that I do best is I'm able to read a room really well. So if I can just continue to do that, I think people realize that I make people hopefully feel comfortable in speaking and communicating, and I think also in any sort of like creative projects that we do together, whether it's like I'm on set and the photographer is a little nervous, or like I saw the makeup artist do this thing. Like I feel like my observation, but that means that all of my needs, I'll be like, I was about to say, I didn't eat anything for 6 hours. I'm so thirsty. I have to shit. Like I'm like, all these things take a back seat, and I let the room be the priority.
When do you put yourself as the priority?
Anytime you don't see me. Whenever I'm home, okay. Michael, I love him to death. I do now whatever I have to do in order to maintain that level of excellence, I do. Like if it means canceling plans, if it means literally not leaving my apartment, I do whatever I can so that when I'm on and I'm out, whether it's for work or whether it's just meeting people, I can give you 100%. You're not gonna, like, if you text me, I'm so sorry, you probably are not gonna get a response. Like, I'm just not, and that is not to like protect my peace. It's literally so that I can like catch up on what I need to do for myself. I think a lot of my friends and my family know that is just sort of like my place now, is that I need to be like completely alone. I crave and adore my solitude and my loneliness. I love it so much in order for me to be able to exist at the capacity and at the level that I do when I'm with people. There's no in between. I hats off to anybody that can find that balance. I have to do one or the other.
I have a couple questions with regards to, and of course I want to, the details of a relationship you keep private, but I'm curious because you, in another interview, Michael is your first boyfriend.
First.
And how have you grown as a partner? Because you guys have been together for a long time now.
Yeah.
How have you grown as a partner in this relationship?
I think that,
if you're comfortable sharing.
Yeah, no, I think I never understood why anyone would ever sacrifice anything for anyone. I was like, that's fucking stupid. Why would I sacrifice myself for a man? Like, what am I doing for anyone? Like, it's just like, what am I do? Why? I have my parents, I have my brother, and I have my best friends. And if you're in my, like, until I saw what it could do and the joy that it could bring to be in a relationship. And Michael and I are very different, and we operate very differently, and we both sacrifice a lot to be in the relationship that we're in. We have to. He sacrifices a lot, and I do too. And for me, I'm such a control freak, and I have to have the apartment to be so clean. And it's not like clean. Like, I clean after my, like, the people who come to clean my apartment clean. Like, it's very tough. It's very, so, like, I think, and for me to just be like, seriously, you can just sit on the couch and watch this movie with Michael and you don't have to think about cleaning the stove. Like, I'm like that kind of stuff, which is fucking crazy.
No.
I've just learned to, like, I think being in this relationship has taught me so much more about what's a priority and what's a necessity and what's not. And I never would have thought that I would have gotten to this point where I would sacrifice for another person. And it has to be mutual, but it's really shocked me. I'm really shocked at what seeing like a lovely person love in your life can do in that way. That's not platonic. You know, with your friends and your family, and I would do anything for them and sacrifice so much for them. I never thought I would do that for a partner.
Do you feel, is it rewarding for you to sacrifice for your partner?
I don't know if it's reward. I would say it is. No, because I hate sacrificing. I would constantly, and Michael will watch this and he'll laugh, but I would constantly clean the apartment. I would constantly be doing these things. I think what it is, though, is I found what is necessary. Like, I've just had to mature. I think it's actually finding comfort in the discomfort. That's the overall lesson. So yeah, it's been rewarding to challenge myself. It's growth. I think it's growth. I have a really difficult time with it. I have a difficult time with it, with anything. And it's even just like in trying to be flexible with people, I really have a hard time.
But it's interesting because even as you know, last time, 45 hours that we've been here, it's like you strike me as somebody who has grown. Like, and that, you know what I mean? Like you were who you were when you were younger. And so I think you probably don't realize how much you appreciate your own growth, if that makes sense.
Just age. I know I don't look a day over 18, but I think when I turned 30, I was just very like, it all sort of, the joy of growing and aging. And I think and there's nothing that will quite do it the way that growth will in terms of like learning and maturing. And the people and I think it's so healthy. And we say this all the time. It's not groundbreaking to be like, you know, growing and maturing is healthy. But like, I think we think it happens once. And then you're like, oh my God, I've grown. And it's like, bitch, this is like a constant, like I'm constantly challenging myself and making myself really uncomfortable. I mean, I think that's what it is. I think it was Oprah who said, like, if you don't do something that you're uncomfortable with every day, you're really not, like, you're not committing to your long-term growth. And I thought that was really fascinating. So I try and do at least something a day, which is very easy for me, that's uncomfortable. And I think that is what's helpful too. It's just constantly being discomfort. I have this thing where like if I get really nervous and anxious about traveling or being in a car, where I just won't eat because I'm like nervous about what will happen if I like get anxious, and I'm like, I'm gonna throw up or shit my pants. But then I was like, Cyrus, you have to eat because that's what you have to do. So I did. It was very uncomfortable. And when I got here, I thought I was going to have to poop in your bathroom, but I didn't, and I'm okay.
It's okay if you have to after.
Totally. But like I think it's just, again, it's like I'm not going to avoid that. Yeah. And I'm not going to do things to my body now that are just not healthy for it at the expense of being comfortable for an extra like 30 minutes. I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. So I think it's, you know, always, every day, something.
And this might be personal. Would you like to have a family one day?
I think so. I think I would. It's so funny. I'm like, I always think about marriage and those things where I'm like, I think if Michael and I are in our 40s and we're just chilling and we're still together. I mean, I don't know. I just think it has to be right. And I think both of us and everybody in this world has a lot of life to live. And I think that the immense privilege we have, which would be, I think, foolish for us not to take advantage of the fact that we don't have a biological clock. And that is such a privilege, and that we are not thinking about. We could have kids if we wanted when we're 40. We could have kids when we're I mean, it's just that offers us a lot of freedom. So I want to relish in that freedom and that opportunity. But I would love that. I think the next step is a dog. We're trying to figure that out.
We're en route to.
Yeah.
Well, I'll show you after.
Okay, yeah. I'm in the we're in the process. We're in the process.
Wait,
it's
can
not
we
happening
time
right
that?
now.
Oh, okay. Cousins?
Maybe I was gonna say I would love. I'm like Michael would. If today I told him to go get one, he would find several. Like it's for me. I'm not quite ready yet. Yeah.
And you know what? And I haven't met Michael yet. And although we will be doing a double date soon.
God, right? Yeah.
But I can probably. I think you guys would be such good parental figures.
I think
and
thank you.
You know, if you choose, then I'm sure it'll be a lovely, amazing.
Well, the feeling's very mutual.
Children,
I can't wait. Yeah, we'll have to talk more about that after. That's so exciting.
To wrap things up, manifest a little bit for me. I mean, you said 10 years, like just going to an island.
Yeah.
But actually speaking, when you are 40, what does life look like altogether holistically, not just on the professional side?
I think I have found I'm closer to that little line that is in between professional obligations and leisure. I'm forever going to be a workaholic and want to work, like I said, but I think to myself of these things, like I'm like, I really want to get a beach house on Cape Cod, or like I really want to take my family to this place. I want to look back, and I'll still have hopefully a lot of life to live, but I want to look back in 10 years and be like, okay, I did those things, or I'm in the process of doing those things that at the end of the day bring me pure joy, like 100% unfiltered joy. And that's really hard in this world, especially for anyone who's just, life is fucking hard. Life is so tough. And I have it so easy in so many ways. It's just like, if I can take the most advantage and look back and say, I'm in the process of doing the things that bring me pure joy, that is going to be the greatest gift to myself. 100%. I really want a beach house. That's
manifesting.
I like that is really, I mean, people say I'm like truly a beach house on Cape Cod. It's like my parents, anytime I say that, they're like, the fact that you would choose that over like the south of France. I know. For me, it's like this, it's an aura, it's a vibe. It's like, it's so personal. It's like this thing that I've worked on for a really long time. So that is my plan.
I see it.
Yeah.
Cyrus, thank you so much.
Thank you so much
for coming.
having
You're
me.
such a. I mean, I'm so happy we got to finally like meet. And
I know,
hang
this is
out.
crazy.
Wild. And I really I think that even in listening to you now talk and my admiration for you, you inspire me, and I think your intelligence, the way you communicate, the way you speak to people, listen to people, is incredible. So keep doing you, and everything that all the manifesting, all the things, all these, you're gonna have it all. I'm certain.
We'll see. We'll look back at this.
We will.
And I'll say, thank you for having me.
Thank you, Cyrus.
Thank you.